Do women really hate nice guys? Today we're going to talk about why being a nice guy, why being kind, why being a giver should be your goal in life as a man. But you'll also learn why the way you've been doing it so far absolutely hasn't worked. Today I'm going to share principles and dynamics with you that if you ignore them will lead to years of suffering. I can tell you that from personal experience. I was married to a woman where a lot of these dynamics took place. I suffered a ton. I've taught clients from 25 different countries all around the world, and I can promise you that ignoring what I'm about to share with you today is going to lead to a whole lot of suffering that I'd rather have you not experience. So, first of all, you have to understand to what degree you've been socially conditioned. Disney movies, radio, your immediate environment, your parents, your uncle, your aunt, school, university have all taught you directly or indirectly that if someone doesn't like you, all you have to do is love them more. She just hasn't seen the beauty in you. You gotta draw her a painting. I have a friend of mine who was in a relationship with a girl, then she broke up with him, then he tried to get her back, so he painted her a painting, brought it to her, left it there, took a picture, sent it to her, and nothing happened. The only thing that happened in that case was that he felt like a little bitch because he absolutely and utterly disrespected him. So you have to understand that you've been trained to the extent that if somebody doesn't like you, all you need to do is give more, love more, invest more. And now you might say, well, I don't want to change that, David. I am a giver. I am genuinely a nice and kind person. I like taking care of women, and that's amazing. But there's a time and place for it, and there's an additional component which you've been completely forgetting, or at least to an extent, which is setting boundaries. In order to get her to like you, you actually have to set boundaries and let her invest in you. Quick example, I have a bunch of very wealthy clients, and after we optimize their online dating, Instagram, dating apps, or they learn to meet women in real life, they sometimes like to fly women in for a weekend, right? And thereby expand their options and eventually choose the most amazing woman for a meaningful long-term relationship. And they have so much money, they don't care about paying for a flight, first class, paying for all of the expenses. It really doesn't bother them at all. And so they do it. Now, the problem is that that doesn't actually get her to like you. She begins to expect that. You just don't understand that you are actually conditioning, you're teaching your environment, you're teaching the people around you how to treat you by setting or by failing to set boundaries, by letting them invest or by failing to giving them opportunities, or by failing to giving them opportunities to invest in you. So what I tell them as a very practical example, fly her in, but either tell her, you're going to pay for the flight and I'll take care of all of the expenses here. Or, I'll pay for the flight and we'll share the expenses when you come over. And some of them get worried, yeah, but what if she doesn't like that? That's an amazing qualification mechanism. Only the wrong women, only gold diggers will have a problem with investing a little bit. You can still take care of 80% of the expenses, but she has to have some skin in the game. She has to have some degree of investment. If that's not there, she's not going to like it. Do you know how many people, how many men, how many close friends I've tried to coach for free? I've tried to put through my coaching program for free, and they just don't give a damn. They don't do the exercises, they don't do the tasks, they don't really take it serious. Why? Because they haven't invested in it. And that's not because they're bad people. I got angry. I was like, why don't you take this serious? There's people who pay so much money for this, and you get it for free just because I like you, just because I've known you for a really long time. Why? Why don't you take this serious? But it's human nature. We don't value what we don't invest in. And that's not some sleazy sales pitch or at all. I'm good at sales, but I don't like it. I really don't. I like coaching. I like being in the subject matter. If you've watched plenty of these videos, or at least a few, you'll get a sense for it, that I actually care. But it's a dynamic you have to understand. If you don't supply her with opportunities throughout the initial dating process to invest in you, for example, she lives half an hour away, you let her come to your place, you ask her to do favors for you, little things. Even if it goes against your nature, if you don't do that, she's not going to value you. Your perceived value in her eyes drops. She's going to start, if you're already in a relationship, she's going to start disrespecting you. And the probability that she's going to be attracted to you is drastically decreased. A lot of men fail to do that very, very, very early on. Another practical example of this over-giving too soon is, let's say you're in a nightclub with a woman. A very practical thing. And you don't ever have to go to bars and nightclubs, by the way, to find an amazing relationship, but it is a fun place. It's an environment worth mastering. It's actually a very ritualistic place. I'll make a video about that some other day. So what a lot of men do when they go to a nightclub and they're talking to a woman, let's say, because it's very loud, right? And you have to project your voice, so they lean in, and leaning in can be okay, just don't do too much of it, but you've got to lean in obviously a little bit to initiate the conversation. So you open, you lean something into her, you whisper, or not whisper, but you say something into her ear, and what they do, the second they realize she responds positively, they basically are glued to her ear. They're like this, blah, 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 and they keep going, they keep going, they keep going. And I'm not sure if you've ever had that. If you're in a loud environment and somebody's speaking into your ear the whole time, for a little bit it's okay, but if they don't back off, if they don't take the pressure off after some amount of time, it gets very uncomfortable. Even if you like the person, even if it's your mother, your best friend, your sister, your girlfriend, it doesn't matter who it is, it doesn't matter how much you like the person. If it's too much, give me a little bit of space. So that's an example of too much. They don't set the boundaries. They don't move their body forward. They don't move it backwards. So you got to invest, but you got to pull back as well. You got to create space. And this is a very beautiful place here in Germany. This is a waterfall in the south of Germany. It's a very vivid and beautiful reminder of space. That's why I was inspired to make this video here today. So understand that in the beginning of the dating process, giving her a chance to invest and setting boundaries is very important. I want to say a few words on boundaries. Some people, women as well as men, they will overstep your boundaries. Everybody's going to overstep your boundaries at some point, almost everybody. Not because they're bad people, but again, if we don't set them, then we're this elusive being. We only become men by setting boundaries, because then they realize, okay, that's his boundary, that's where we really only become a being in space by setting these boundaries. So for example, some people are going to make demands for your time. And if they're unreasonable demands, you have to set a boundary and obviously communicate that accordingly. Some women are going to expect you to text a lot. And you may not want to do that. She's going to expect you to send her a good morning text, a good afternoon text, a good night text. And if she doesn't receive that from you, she might be very upset. Now, if you're somebody who likes doing that, that's amazing. It's all about self-awareness. If you're somebody who genuinely enjoys texting, do it. But please differentiate whether you actually like texting or you think you like it because you're afraid that she's going to lose interest in you if you don't keep up this high amount of texting, okay? So, that's an example. And what I teach my clients, what I'm telling you right here is set boundaries. In the initial dating phase, you have to master texting. Apply for a free call if you want that. I teach the most advanced, the world's best texting framework in my coaching program. I'd be very happy to help you with that as well. But regardless, one of the things that's very, very important with this in the texting phase is, you master dating, right? You get that down, but then, let's say you've been on a date or two and a degree of intimacy has been established, if you get what I mean, then if she still has very, very high expectations of your level of texting, I would set a boundary, because that's not who I am. I still, to this day, I'm amazing at texting. I can transform all of your conversations. You have conversations that die out, I can transform them, because it's a skill set I've developed. I was terrible at that. I was a German logical overthinker. No idea. Now I can do that. But I still hate it. So I did that last week in a group coaching call with the clients. I showed them Fernanda's and my texts. The first text we've had 2.5, 3 years ago on Instagram, my texting was extraordinarily short. I paid attention to the best practices. I applied the framework that I'm teaching people today. But it was very short. It was still authentic to me. And that's important. It always has to be authentic to you. It's a balance between applying the dynamics, studying the laws of attraction, and still doing it in a way that's authentic to you. So there's many, many more examples of setting boundaries. The most important thing that I want to do with this video is even create an awareness in you for the idea of boundaries, because I didn't have that at all. I was married to a woman where I didn't understand the concept of boundaries. I was always out there. I was teaching karate at my university, then I drove 15 minutes by bus, got beaten up by some of the best instructors in Europe, which was amazing, right? So I was always out and about. I'm not the kind of guy to like staying at home, as you may have realized. I like being out, exploring, conquering the world, having a good time, sharing love. Being out there, being proactive. Now, she very much liked spending the Saturdays and the Sundays at her parents'. Not even necessarily doing anything, just sitting in the living room, everybody kind of on their phones, maybe watching the odd funny YouTube video together, and I'm there, this is nice, I guess. And it was nice, because at that point in time, I didn't have a large social circle. I had a few core friends, but I thought it was expected that I show up. And it was expected. She had the expectation for me to arrive Saturday evening at the dinner, and sometimes even spend the entire weekend there. Where what I would have really preferred is to be out there with the boys, do something productive, do something fun. It didn't mean that I didn't want to spend it doesn't mean that I didn't want to spend any time with her at all. It was just not an activity that I particularly enjoyed, right? It's not what you want as a young man. Be there in the living room with people that you don't even have a high degree of compatibility with. That's another factor. But I felt that those expectations had to be met, so I didn't set a boundary. I didn't say, no, what I'm going to be doing instead is it's a Saturday. In my club, they also train from 11:30 to 1 p.m., 30 kilometers outside of Dublin. I prefer to get beaten up instead of sitting on a couch doing nothing. I didn't do that. There's many different examples. I tell the story with the sun cream, the sun protection. It's a beautiful sunny day in Ireland. Many years ago, I was with my ex-wife, and if it's a sunny day in Ireland, then almost the entire country stops, at least to an extent, because there's not that many beautifully sunny days. So we leave the apartment, we go for a walk, and it's around 2 minutes. And she goes, David, you should probably put on some sun protection. I'm like, I know I'm ginger and white, I burn easily, I get it, but give me 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes to get some vitamin D. I haven't seen the fucking sun in 3 weeks, okay? So then she goes, no, you should put it on. Yeah, I will, in 30, 40 minutes. She goes, no, you should put it on right now. I'm like, yeah, I'll put it on in 45 minutes. She didn't speak to me for 3 hours. We were supposed to spend the Saturday afternoon together. She literally walked in front of me a little bit to display her degree of dissatisfaction with my behavior, and then she literally just walked away, okay? I will never insult her, okay? I'm not the kind of person to talk bad about other people publicly. She was a good person at heart. She's still a kind and very good person, but there were certain dynamics that were slightly off. Now, this is a really important side note. Some of these things depend on compatibility. It almost doesn't matter how many boundaries you set with the wrong person. If you're in a relationship with the wrong person, it doesn't matter what boundaries you set. They're going to keep crossing them. They're going to keep treating you like a piece of shit. That's very important. It doesn't matter how many opportunities you give her to invest. It doesn't matter how many opportunities you have to set boundaries, and you actually do set the boundaries. If you're in a relationship with the wrong person, it's all gonna go to shit. Okay? That's important. So these dynamics, they presuppose that you are in a relationship with somebody, or that you're dating somebody where there's a high degree of compatibility. But even if you're in a relationship, or even if you're dating women as a man with a high degree of compatibility, if you fail to set those boundaries, with men and women, by the way, sometimes even good friends of yours, if you fail to provide opportunities to invest, they won't value you. They will take you for granted. They will completely forget all the stuff you've done for them. They're going to completely forget about it and only narrow in on the negative, because the way they perceive you in their mind has completely switched, because your value has been lessened because they haven't invested. So, that was the first part of the video. The German accent coming through, the video. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that we can't be nice anymore? Does that mean that we can't be kind? Does that mean that we have to become a player now? That we have to be the quote-unquote asshole now? No, not at all. You don't have to be a player. You don't have to be an asshole to attract women. You can be kind. You can be a giver. It should be the biggest goal in your life to give. Because remember what Tony Robbins says, contribution is what lights us up. Contribution is the biggest source of fulfillment and happiness for us as human beings. Giving without expecting in return. Now, obviously, sometimes we do things in life. A fair proportion of the time, we do things in life and we have the expectation to get something in return. We're a human being. We have needs that need to be met, of course. But having an area, a person, a charity, or at least a general attitude of contribution to beings and things and circumstances in general is going to give you the most amount of fulfillment. And I'm not perfect. It's something that I'm working on. It is one of my goals to get better at that every year. Give more. Get less selfish. Now, I wouldn't say I'm the most selfish person. I have maybe every now and then a tendency to act a little bit selfish, but then other times I completely overshare and overgive and I let people take advantage of me. That happens as well. So it's very important that you become aware of yourself. But I still want to encourage you to give. There's so much beauty. There's so much abundance in life. And once you establish the frames properly, once you teach people in a very respectful and calm manner how to treat you by simply calmly setting boundaries and saying, that's not okay. I'm going to do that. You know, like the actual communication thereof is going to be very calm. I'm very excited to be shooting this video right now. But if I'm in actual conversations with people where I have to set boundaries, I'm very calm. When I'm enthusiastic and when I'm in sharing and coaching mode, I get into it. But if it's actually a crucial conversation, if you have to apply non-violent communication, like Marshall Rosenberg teaches, has to be very calm. But you got to set those boundaries. And then, once you've established those frames, you can keep giving. You can invest. You can make her life better. You're supposed to make her life better. You're supposed to rent a car, go into the forest, rent a cabin in the wood, travel around the world, provide her with experiences, take care of her family members, you know? Expand your circle of concern. I'm not sure if Mother Teresa actually said it. I believe it was her. She said, expand your circle of concern. We are so often only concerned with ourselves. Me, 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 me. But then again, in the beginning of the dating phase, you have to do that to an extent. Doesn't mean you can't be kind, doesn't mean you can't invest. Set those frames properly, and there's a lot more dynamics, a lot more frames that need to be established. Boundaries, giving and taking, this idea is just one of many examples. When you do that, then you can give. Then you should really look for opportunities on a daily basis to make her life better. Because remember, at some point you're going to die. At some point you're not going to be able to experience this beauty anymore. What do you want people to say about you at your funeral? Do you want them to say that you were a selfish dude who only looked after his own interests? Or were you somebody who was absolutely generous with his time, his energy, his money? Everything he had to give, he shared. Not to the extent where he depleted himself. That's very important. If you deplete yourself, there will be nothing left of you. That's why you got to set these boundaries. Look, it's interesting, right? I'm traveling through Germany. I traveled to Germany with Fernanda the other day. And my mother, Fernanda, and I, we were thinking of going to Austria to go to an even bigger waterfall. But it's raining in Austria. I don't know how it can be raining 2 hours from here and not here. Anyway, I got to ask a friend of mine. He's an expert when it comes to that. But anyway, my mom and I were thinking of just driving to Austria, and then we became aware, oh, Fernanda, with a Brazilian passport, she's not going to be able to cross the border that easily. And I'm like, and my reaction initially was like, that's nonsense, people are people. That's the spirit that I was brought up in. My mother brought me up in a way that human beings are human beings. It doesn't matter where they come from. Don't judge them based on some characteristic that makes them part of the group. Judge them, and don't judge them at all. Love them. They're human beings, okay? That was very much the sentiment that I was raised in. So we were both a little bit, not angry, but we were a little bit annoyed at the idea of, oh, we might actually have trouble crossing the border. My mom immediately went back to positivity. She was like, well, there's many more. And she Googled the most beautiful waterfalls in Bavaria. But then I reflected on it. It was like, no, borders are important. Borders are absolutely important, because what if countries don't protect themselves? Now, this is not a political discussion at all. I'm not political. I don't put myself here or there. I'm not an expert in politics. This is not a political statement. But I believe borders make sense. Borders for you as an individual make sense, because only then people realize, I understand who he is. People want to treat you respectfully. The right ones, the wrong ones, they're going to want to tear you down all the way to hell. The right ones, they're going to want to treat you well. But they need to get a sense for your boundaries. They need to feel, this is where he's at. He's allowing me to come to this point, no further. And you have to become aware to go one level deeper. When people cross your boundaries, when they make unreasonable demands on your time, when she has expectations, many, many different things, this is going to create emotions in you. And yes, on the one hand, people can absolutely trigger emotions in you. But on the other hand, I don't want you to have this victim mentality that's propagated on social media a lot, that other people can make you feel things. Marshall Rosenberg, founder of Nonviolent Communication, goes so far to say that saying that you made me feel sad, you made me angry, is actually violent communication, because it's not true. Nobody can make you feel things. Different paradigms. Both have to be respected. We'll go a little bit too far today. I'll talk about that in another video. But today it's just about Yes, these things trigger emotions in you. And understand that if somebody crosses your boundary, that may trigger frustration, anger, sadness, hurt, fear. You know, a lot of different emotions may be triggered in that moment. Fear of losing that person, anger because the person crossed that boundary, and all these negative emotions serve a purpose. They're making you aware. Hey, motherfucker, somebody's crossing your boundaries. Do something. Do something. But what you have to understand is thoughts don't just create emotions. Emotions also create thoughts. So please be aware that if somebody does that, that you don't react from an emotional place. Because as much as we like to talk about the other people, they're crossing our boundaries. They are not investing in us. What about ourselves? Have I crossed somebody's boundaries? Have I maybe not invested? You know, whenever you hear a criticism of somebody, I'd like to encourage you to think about it immediately from a self-reflective standpoint, not with a negative and self-defeating, I'm a piece of shit dialogue, but also, oh, maybe I need to get better at it. But when you feel these emotions, when somebody triggers that in you, those emotions create thoughts. There's something called state-dependent memory. Depending on the emotional state you're in, you're only able to access certain emotions, certain thoughts. Have you ever had that where you're in a negative emotional mood and you're just not able to get positive thoughts? The easiest way to break that is to change your physiology. Go for a run, sauna, little breathing exercise. There's a million different things, a million different techniques that you can use to take control of your mental emotional state right now. To not react. Sometimes it's important that if somebody crosses your boundary, if you have a conflict situation, that you take a step back. You breathe. You talk to other people. Get feedback. If you're a man, you're dating a woman, and she's doing certain things, then, like for example, somebody asked me on my Instagram story today, he said, I overreact a lot. Should I work on myself or should I just move on? Well, if you actually overreact, this is what I'm talking about. Take control of your emotions. Don't react. Respond. Practice emotional control. That's something we all have to work on. That's something you have to work on as a man. That's very important. But at the same time, sometimes women or people in general are going to tell you that you overreact, even when you're very calm and you're simply setting a boundary and you're saying up until this point and no further. No, I wouldn't like to do that. I really don't appreciate that. Oh, you're overreacting. Bah, 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 bah. Gaslighting is the thing. Again, in further videos, we're going to elaborate on these a little bit more. The essence of today, first of all, give people opportunities to invest in you, set boundaries, and once that's there, invest, invest, invest. But again, you can't just do that in the beginning. You can't just have the investment, the demand of the investment up front. You also have to give up front. In every social interaction, be it with women or with men, even though it manifests very differently, you have to be the giver. You have to take the first step to get them to like you. Then boundaries and frames and all of that. Then you give, give, give. But it's never going to end. You, as men, always think that you're going to achieve completion. If I have $500 million, then I've achieved completion. When I have this beautiful girlfriend, when I've gotten rid of this health problem, then there's completion. When I've done this, when I've done that, these dynamics, they're going to keep going, and relationships are going to be one of the areas where you're going to experience the greatest joy is really having an amazing girlfriend who can film you while you're shooting YouTube videos is an amazing thing. But those dynamics with friends, family members, your loved ones, your intimate partner, they're going to keep going for the rest of your life. You will have to pay a little bit, not paranoid, but a little bit attention to those dynamics of giving, 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 giving. That's what you should do. Default, give. Default, give. But if you feel that the other person is reacting negatively towards you, so you get a few negative signals, okay, reflect. Maybe you have to set a boundary. Maybe you have to get a little bit of investment. And some people, Jonathan and I, we talk about that regularly. We're like, holy shit. Sometimes this can be a little bit challenging. And yes, sometimes it can be a little bit challenging. But don't think of it as war. Don't think of it as something strenuous. Think of it as a game. And metaphors control how we feel. Remember, the meaning we give things have a massive influence on how we feel. So if you call it a game, it takes a lot of the tension out of it. So, understand the dynamics, set boundaries, keep your value high, and then become a giver. I sincerely wish you all the best.